When I was very young, I fell into religion as something so necessarily natural. When my parents were not religious. We didn't have any church we belonged to. And at 8 years old, I knew God and I knew the Christ level. I just knew Jesus was so. It might, at that young age, be something that could be it was like Santa Claus, it was a natural thought. Well, of course he exists. Why wouldn't he exist? Santa Claus, Jesus, probably all wrapped in the same youthful. Of course he does. Except that I started perceiving inwardly what I'd call the native solutions of God's goodness. It would just come in me as not exactly a voice, but like an overlay of love that sent a song of truth all the way through me. And I always knew that it was there if I needed it. And there is something like a protective wrap constantly all the way through my days. It never occurred to me not to trust it. And as I turned around 11, I also understood that there wasn't anything about my life that wasn't in God duty. I would maybe not have used exactly those words, but that there wasn't any other path than to listen within and do what was intended for love's work. I still didn't have it crystallized to I will go out and be a missionary. In fact, it never occurred to me to go out and talk about God. It just occurred to me that I would serve, that I would counsel, that I would help somehow be a solution. And at 17, I remember praying in a way I asked just to have wisdom and to be of service. Looking back now, I am sure that whoever chooses strongly and confirms that year by year by year will have that be native to their entire life and their way of walking on earth, and everything they do, no matter if they're an accountant, it'll still show up there. I began downloading information bit by bit ever since I was 11 years old. It wouldn't come in long phrases that I could pick up, but it would come in simple solutions. And when I was 19, I was a chaplain of my dorm in Linfield College, and on youth deputation teams throughout Washington and Oregon, where I talked to the youth about Christ. I don't even remember now what I talked to them about, but I know I showed up for the youth, and one of the downpourings happened and opened me up and said, you don't have the entire solution. And at that point, I simply put it all aside and said, all right, God, then show me what I'm to know. At 23, I had my first huge revolution of understanding that I am ongoing. We are all ongoing. There was no commitment just to a body life. It was an ongoing soul, spirit. No one told me that. I recognized it. It's a big change that happened. I met some folks out in the country who were drawn, ironically, to listening for the truth together in a collective. I say ironically because all of my days I had listened within in a deep study just between me and God. I didn't talk to ministers. I didn't seek out anybody else's knowledge. I didn't read books about it, ever. In my early formative years, it was deep prayer and listening and just assuming that God speaks directly to those. And I didn't separate it out by saying, I am chosen or anything like that, because I thought it was normal. Since I never asked anybody, I never talked about it with anybody, I always thought it was normal to have direct contact with what I now call the God presence or the God region of awareness. That there is a natural proclivity in us, if we love that divine line of awareness, for it to have a way to subsume the lesser mind and open it up to paying attention to truth. And normally I would just say that that time I was more like a sage that just knew. I knew not to take drugs. I knew not to hurt my mind. I knew not to have children. I knew there would be counseling of some kind. I just knew. I knew my life would unfold in the biggest way at 40, when my service would begin, and I knew at 60 I would have come to pretty much my most mature side. And all along the way, those prophecies showed up. You could say we all programmed this, but there was something that wasn't thought about it. It was just, oh, this is how it's going to unfold. Just, okay, sort of an inner nod, and it was just natural. When I met the folks it was Southern Oregon, they were studying meditation and the kind of prayer where we would come together and say, in the highest reason for us coming together, may we unfold the truth together. And in learning how to coordinate myself with others and change my sensitivity so that I wasn't just unfolding the mind to understand holy word from above and from within me, but because something of a chain event was happening where people were coming together and trying to see if they could unfold the answer in an even bigger way, where they would, not unlike what we're doing now, consider things that were not normal to our day. They were not private only. But we started meditating, and I remember thinking, well, if I've been receiving this so easily before, meditation should just really move that up a pace. And I always say that the funniest part to me now is that it took 16 years. Not 3 months like I thought it might. It took 16 years. And so when I was almost 40, that's when the word started to downpour, and it never shuts off now. It's never away from me. I call it the word, the great W, which really means what is create energy, what all springs through.